Thank you for joining. As you know, I do organization development, and for me, OD is about fixing those funny things that happen in the organization. So, fixing those funny things one conversation at a time. In fact, this course, 16 behavioral science concepts that take emotional intelligence to the next level, is about those funny things. We all sense when something funny is happening in the room, right? The problem is it's so hard to put your finger on what's going on. The purpose of this course is to help you find better explanations to those moments, and the leaders who can recognize and decode that funny thing that is happening beneath the surface can make life easier for the people around them. I believe that is what leading with emotional intelligence at the next level could look like. So today in our first session, we are going to explore 4 behavioral science concepts that help us understand how emotions and perceptions shape judgment. And in each of the following monthly sessions, I will introduce 3 more concepts. Second one is going to be frame decisions and design choices. And the third will explore using time and trade-offs to your advantage. Finally, the fourth one, decide better together. Okay, this will and then in the 5th session, we'll bring everything together, all 16 concepts together. Okay, all right. So session 1, understand how emotions and perceptions shape judgment. Concept number 1, the affect heuristic is a mental shortcut. It's where we give a good or bad tag in sizing up a situation. It's about our tendency to use intuition. How do I feel about this? Yeah. And instead of using more objective, weighting, assessing the pros and cons of the situation. So it's the quick judgment, intuition. That's what affective heuristic is. Concept 2, integral and incidental emotions. This is about where the feeling came from. Okay, some feelings belong to the decision in front of you. For example, I feel this investment is risky, and other emotions come from somewhere else, but spill over into the present situation. Like, you just had a really crappy meeting and you're feeling, super grumpy. The next meeting has nothing to do with that, but you bring in that grumpy feeling into the next meeting. Okay, so these are 2 categories of emotional state that influence judgment, but they come from different sources. Hot-cold empathy gap. Okay, this is about being a fair and level-headed leader when emotions are running high. And here's the complex part. It's not just about staying cool when things get hot, but it's about foresight. We're surprisingly bad at predicting how our judgment changes in a different emotional state, both in our own selves, own future self, current self and future self, and with other people. Okay, so we'll look into this because this is quite a complex topic. Finally, emotional contagion. Now, emotional contagion, this itself is a very, very simple concept. It's about the mood we bring into the room. But the ramifications are really big. So actually, emotional contagion is going to be our largest section that we're going to spend time today. Okay. Emotional contagion is particularly important because it is about collective judgment. It's about how it disturbs our ability to think together. So that's the reason why emotional contagion is super important. So from this individual snap reaction to where the feeling came from how judgment shifts across emotional states to the mood we bring into the room, let's understand how emotions and perceptions shape our judgment and what to do about it. All right, let's go. Concept number 1, affect heuristic. When we assess a situation, a person, or idea, we rarely begin with a completely neutral rational analysis. Our intuition quickly pulls a good or bad tag. And this is what researchers call it's a pull from our affect pool. Yeah? It's a reservoir of emotional associations built from our memory and experiences. Something may feel reassuring because it comes from a trusted brand. A person may look trustworthy because they're wearing a very nice suit. Or you immediately brush off a product proposal because it has yet another AI in the name. This happens before we deliberately weigh the facts. It is part of what Daniel Kahneman calls System 1 thinking. Okay, Thinking Fast and Slow, the famous book, yeah? So system one is fast, automatic, and intuitive. Instead of asking the more difficult question, what are the actual risks and benefits? Yeah? We often answer the easier one. How do I feel about this? This shortcut is fast, and it's actually often useful. Intuition can be surprisingly accurate. And as a matter of fact, you're all experienced leaders, and you regularly sense that something is not quite right before you can even explain why. Right? So I'm not saying that intuition is bad. Okay? But the problem with intuition is that it gets easily skewed by mood. Sorry, I lost track of where I was. Here it is. Okay. It gets easily skewed by mood, past experiences, and preconceived notions. The same proposal may look more attractive when we are in a relaxed and optimistic, mood, and it can feel more threatening when we are tired or irritated. This is related to the next concept, incidental emotions, so we will dig into that more later. Okay. Now, one very important thing. It can be uncomfortable to acknowledge, but we also need to be aware of prejudice. Okay, so earlier encounters in our life, stereotypes, assumptions, these can all trigger unwarranted negative judgments before we have properly considered the person or the situation in front of us. Okay? So be careful of prejudice. This is one very important, lesson of affect heuristic. Strong feelings. Strong feelings can also overpower data. When something feels good, we tend to see more benefit and less risk. When it feels bad, we tend to see more risk and less benefit. Yeah. This helps explain why firm views, strong views, sometimes persist even after the evidence changes. The emotional judgment may have come first, with the reasoning built around it afterwards. That is when we need to activate system 2. System 2 is slower and more effortful. It deliberately weighs facts, alternatives, risks, benefits, probabilities, and costs. So what can we do? The first step is actually step 0. Okay? This is to catch yourself when you notice a judgment forming unusually quick, strongly, or emotionally. So if you're feeling that, oh, I'm making a snap decision, notice it. Okay? That is your signal to pause and bring system 2 into the process. Then name the feeling. Ask, what are you feeling about this? Naming the feeling brings the initial reaction into conscious awareness, making it easier to examine. Then separate the feeling from the fact. Ask what data supports this view. What evidence might challenge it? What are the possible outcomes, risks, benefits, and costs? The aim is not to prove that the initial feeling was wrong. It may be pointing towards something important. The aim is to test whether the judgment still holds after system 2 has examined it. Okay? Finally, ask again. Now that you know this, now that I know this, does my assessment change? Yeah. The core insight of the affect heuristic is not that we should dismiss system 1 intuition. Intuition can be helpful, and in the right condition, it can be highly accurate. The point is to recognize the crucial moment when we need to slow down and activate system 2. Our feelings can provide valuable information, but they should not automatically become the final verdict. This is what the affect heuristic was about. Next, integral versus incidental emotions. Behavioral economics, decision science. Yes, these are big topics in business schools like INSEAD. Yeah, and that's how I got into this stuff too for my own practice. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, and the fascinating part, the core idea is as following: emotions shape our judgment. It's a simple statement, but it's anything but simple. Yeah. Take integral and incidental emotions. On closer inspection, okay, there are 2 different categories of emotional state that influence our judgment, and we are often surprisingly unaware of the difference. Both integral and incidental emotions shape our judgment, but they come from different sources. Integral emotions arise directly from the decision or situation in front of us. They are the emotions attached to the choice itself, such as the anxiety you feel about the risk in an investment decision you're about to make, or the excitement over a new job opportunity. Incidental emotions are carried in from somewhere else. They have nothing to do with the situation in front of us, but they spill over into it. Perhaps you arrived at work and feeling grumpy after a crowded train ride on a rainy day. Ugh. Perhaps you just had a difficult phone call. You may be tired, you may be hungry, you may be jet lagged, or maybe worried about something at home. Or perhaps you have just received some very good news and arrive feeling unusually upbeat and confident. That positive mood may actually make a risky proposal seem more attractive, or lead you to underestimate what could go wrong. Yeah. So when you're in that positive mood and you propose something, you have a tendency to sign it. Very dangerous, yeah. Those emotions are real, but they do not belong to the decision now in front of you. Even so, you could still be impacted by them. This distinction matters because the two kinds of emotion need to be handled differently. Integral emotions serve a functional and strategic purpose. Yeah, it's important. It's helpful. They can act as useful signals, prompting us to slow down and examine the facts, risks, and benefits of the decision in front of us. Yeah. Often cases, you will have a professional hunch. Yeah. That's an integral emotion. The anxiety about a risky contract is exactly what makes you slow down and read the fine print. The flutter of excitement about a deal should prompt you to check that you're evaluating it objectively. Incidental emotions, on the other hand, they are highly susceptible to misattribution. Someone in an incidental state of anger may unconsciously carry that aggressive appraisal into an unrelated business meeting, becoming overly critical. Or someone still elated after receiving good news may become more optimistic and risk tolerant than the situation warrants. The emotion has spilled over and we have attached it to the wrong source. Recognizing that an emotion is incidental rather than integral is the primary way to keep it from skewing our judgment. The trouble is, incidental emotions are hard to detect. Yeah. Mood is genuinely hard to read in ourselves. We can be grumpy, tense, tired, wired, but we may not even be aware of it. We might not even register it. Yeah. It's often only after we deliberately turn our attention towards ourselves, to our moods, that we notice it. And even then, it can be hard to name. I think you'll agree with me. It's not unusual to feel low, but you don't know where it comes from. You have no real idea why. That's what's difficult about mood. Yeah. Incidental emotions are hard to detect. And brushing the feeling aside does not make it go away. We tell ourselves to move on. We switch to the next task on our to-do list. But that low-grade mood stays in the background, quietly impacting the next judgment and the one after that. You might think this is simply about mood, but it can have a significant implication for leadership performance. I do Hogan assessments, and sometimes this pattern shows up as a serious leadership concern. A leader may make a harsh remark or an unfair judgment during a bad moment, and then they themselves will move on. But the person affected may carry the consequences, maybe for months. What was temporary for the leader can become lasting damage for someone else. And these things tend not to be isolated incidents. They become patterns. Over time, people see that pattern and they become more guarded. They stop bringing in difficult issues forward to this leader and they warn others to be careful about that person. Yeah. Eventually, it's a reputation risk. The reputation catches up with them, undermining trust, influence, and their ability to lead effectively. It's actually serious damage. We have to take this seriously. So, what can we do? The first move is to pause before a decision that matters and name the mood. What am I carrying in into this decision? Next, locate the source. Does this feeling belong to the situation in front of me, or has it come from somewhere else? If it came from somewhere else, ask the critical question. If this mood or feeling were gone tomorrow, would I still make the same decision? Would I still make the same call? If the honest answer is no, or even I'm not sure, then it's a signal that you shouldn't push through. Create some distance. Try resetting. Take a break. Have some tea, a snack. Go for a short walk. Sleep on the decision. And if the decision cannot wait, ask someone who is steadier at the moment and ask them to test your perspective. Even more, hand the decision to them. Ask them to make the decision on, instead of yourself, because that person is more steadier than you. That is not weakness. That is emotional intelligence in action. You can offer the same to others gently. When you sense someone is deciding from a mood rather than the merits, you might say, if whatever happened earlier weren't bothering you, would you still decide this way? It gives them the same chance to separate the two without feeling judged. So the aim here is not to become someone who never has a bad day. The aim is to notice when a bad day is quietly creeping into your judgment, because your team, your people, has to live with the decision long after your mood has lifted. Okay? Noticing when a feeling has wandered in from somewhere else, that's a small discipline, but it has a long reach. It has a big impact. And it's one of the quieter ways of looking after the people who depend on your judgment. Alrighty. Third one, hot-cold empathy gap. This is a cognitive bias that applies across time and across people. Okay, it's quite a complex one. Right? The hot-cold empathy gap describes how badly we misjudge what we will think or do in a state we are not currently experiencing. Think about grocery shopping. Grocery shopping when you're hungry. Grocery shopping when you are calm and full. When you are not hungry, you're calm, you just buy the things off the list, right? But when you're hungry, you fill the cart with all of this junk food and, yummy looking things, whatever looks good. And you come home with the stuff and say, did I really need this? Yeah. Behavioral economist George Lowenstein named this, cognitive bias, hot-cold empathy gap. And he describes hunger, fear, anger, stress, exhaustion, all of these things as visceral states. Right? So these are physical, feelings that you actually have inside your body. And these visceral states, they can easily take us over. Yeah. And it will last while we are, completely, occupied in that. We are totally controlled by this visceral state. But surprisingly, they fade very, very quickly too, once that, memory passes by. So visceral states are strong, but they disappear very quickly too. As a result, our calm self and our heated self, the cold and the hot state, yeah, calm me and hot me. I can't feel, each other, yeah. The hot state self and the cold state self cannot feel it almost feels like two different people, yeah, and they just can't talk with each other. They just can't feel each other. That's why hot-cold empathy gap is so difficult. Okay? There are three directions in which this matters for leaders. The first direction is cold to hot, okay? And it matters particularly for our planning. We often plan in a calm, fresh state, picturing a clean run. From that state, we assume that our future selves and the people who will have to implement the plan will remain equally focused, patient, and rational. What we underestimate is the tired, distracted, and pressured version of ourselves who will actually have to deliver. We don't really, empathize that. Yeah, that is the reason why, plans tend to fall apart, because we fail to empathize with our own future selves. The second direction, hot to cold. This explains the overreaction we later regret. A spreadsheet error is discovered during a final budget approval meeting in front of stakeholders. An internal team email is actually sent to a client. A bill breaks or a deployment fails. In that moment, the incident can feel existential. And as leader, you might overreact. Get it fixed! You might shout. Yeah? And you might even immediately reprimand the person in the hot seats. Like, yeah. At the time, the response may feel justified as decisive leadership. You're on top of it. Yeah? But later, once we have calmed down, we see that the situation was probably manageable without the exaggerated reaction and without the damage to trust, confidence, and reputation that came with it. The same overreaction actually can show up in management decisions, at the organization level. One security breach and every system is locked down. One bad hire and the process gains 3 more approval gates. One public failure and then everyone gets a new policy. Yeah. These are often hot state decisions made when the fear is loudest. It's the same pattern as the hungry shopper, except the consequences now fall on the people and the organization. The third direction is interpersonal, okay? And this can be particularly costly for leaders. When we are cold and the person in front of us is hot, stressed, afraid, overloaded, we cannot feel the force shaping that behavior. Right? So we explain the behavior as character. Yeah, they're difficult, they're lazy, because we're in a cold state and they're in a hot state, and the cold state us cannot really feel what's going on with them. So the right thing is to evaluate on context. Oh, they're under real pressure. But the hot state that they're in, it's a temporary state. But we don't recognize that, and we misread it as a character judgment. That's the big problem. Okay, and it runs the other way too. A leader who is hot assumes everyone shares the urgency, right? So like, deadline, gotta do. But then if one of the team members are more calm and composed, yeah, as leader, what do you feel? Oh, this person is indifferent. This person is uncommitted. So it goes both ways. Yeah. This is why being more empathetic is not good advice. The hot-cold empathy gap, our difficult accessing a hot emotional state when cold and vice versa, is a persistent cognitive bias. It's very difficult to shake it off, right? We need something more practical than hoping we will suddenly become wiser and more empathetic when the pressure arrives. Anyone can make a good decision when they are calm. The real difference here is whether a leader can still decide when they are under pressure. And again, this is not simply about keeping your cool. It is about anticipating how to make a good decision in situations where keeping your cool may be difficult. So, what can we do? The most practical tool, okay, and take note of this, if there's any takeaway from today, this is it. Use if-then plans, okay? Rather than relying on a general intention, such as I will stay calm or I will respond with empathy, an if-then plan identifies a likely trigger and a predetermined response. If this happens, then I will do that. If I discover someone's error, then I will breathe for 1 minute before responding. If an email provokes me, then I will draft a reply, but I will wait until the next morning before sending it. The calm self leaves instructions for the pressured selves. It's pretty genius, isn't it? Yes. This works because it does not depend on becoming wiser while in a hot state. It's a lifesaver. So really, really use if-then plans. Meanwhile, build in slack, add buffers, guardrails, and more time than that ideal scenario appears to require. And plan for interruptions, fatigue, mistakes, and bad days. Finally, consider state before character. Before making a strong judgment about the other person, consider what may be behind their behavior. Ask, what pressure, emotion, or circumstance may be shaping what I am seeing? This does not mean excusing harmful behavior or removing accountability. It means making sure that we understand the context before turning a temporary response into a permanent judgment about the person. The core insight of hot cold empathy gap is, again, not simply about staying cool when things get hot. It's that judgment changes with our state, and we are poor at predicting that change. Good leadership here is less about heroic self-control in the moment. It's about foresight, preparing responses, buffers, and safeguards before the heat arrives. Last one, emotional contagion. The basic idea of emotional contagion is very straightforward. It is the unconscious spread of emotion between people through facial expressions, tone, posture, movement, pace, breathing, and attention. We all know that, right? Okay. Now, what we want to spend time on is understanding its impact and how to manage it, because one person's emotional state can quickly become the team's climate, shaping whether the environment drains the team or helps it thrive. Shared mood shapes the group's judgment. It influences what the group notices and what it overlooks. In an anxious group, people may become highly alert to risks, but overlook opportunities. In an irritated group, a neutral comment may be interpreted as criticism. In a cynical group, new ideas may be dismissed before they receive serious consideration. In an overexcited group, confidence may rise so quickly that nobody wants to point out what could go wrong. Yeah. It's all pointing to the many, problems of group thinking, right? Yeah. Individually very, very smart people, when they get into the room, they make stupid decisions. Emotional contagion has a big, role to play in that. Right? This is why emotional contagion is not about whether people are feeling good or bad. The more important question is whether emotion is helping or overwhelming the group's ability to think. Some emotions need to be contained, right? And I'll make the decision of containing and suppressing these shortly, all right? Because I know that you're already thinking about that. Okay? Panic can narrow attention and encourage reactive decisions. Cynicism can spread resignation. Irritation can turn disagreement into personal conflict. Unchecked excitement can make a group complacently optimistic, moving ahead without testing its assumptions. Containing these emotions do not mean suppressing them. It means preventing them from taking over the conversation and becoming the only lens through which the group sees the situation. That's what containing it means. Other emotions can be cultivated. They can be used. Calm can help people remain open when uncertainty is high. Curiosity can turn disagreement into exploration. Realistic confidence can give people the courage to act without pretending success is guaranteed. Concern can focus attention on something important, while a shared sense of purpose can help people stay engaged when the work becomes difficult. These are not just niceties or simple pleasant emotions. Right? These emotions serve a functional purpose. They help teams maintain balanced judgment and take purposeful action. Leaders are particularly important because they are emotional amplifiers. People pay close attention to a leader's signal, particularly when the situation is uncertain. A sign of anxiety can be interpreted as evidence that something is wrong. A dismissive remark can give others permission to become cynical. Visible calm can reassure the group that the situation is manageable. Okay. Now, this does not mean controlling how everyone feels. Okay, this is not manipulation of emotions. All right. It means recognizing that what you bring into the room affects what becomes possible inside it. So, what can we do? I group my suggestions into 3 areas: manage your own emotional contagion, manage the emotional contagion of others, and create an emotional climate people can think inside. First, manage your own emotional contagion by conducting a mood audit. Before joining a meeting, pause and ask, what am I bringing into this room? You may be frustrated by an earlier conversation, or you're anxious about a deadline, or excited about an idea you want approved. The feeling may be understandable, but noticing it helps prevent incidental emotions from spilling into the room unchecked. Then ask, is this emotional state useful for what the group needs? If the group needs to examine risk carefully, urgency could help, but panic will not. If the group needs to generate ideas, curiosity could help, but early enthusiasm for one particular solution may steer the discussion too quickly. Using your emotional influence deliberately does not mean performing an emotion you do not feel. It means reading what energy the situation needs and drawing on the emotions already present in you that can support it. It does not mean faking a different emotion or showing up differently. Right? Only use what you have. Right? The next practice is simple. Do not text what needs a voice. Written messages. Written messages remove tone, facial expression, pacing, posture, and immediate response. Okay, so when those cues are missing, short email, what's up message, people fill in the gaps themselves. A short message written in frustration can create hours of anxiety or speculation for the recipient. When a situation needs nuance or reassurance or repair, move to voice, video, or a face-to-face conversation. Use a channel that gives the emotion enough context. Okay. Leave only text messaging and emails for something that is factual. Anything that needs a nuance, jump on a call. Just grab the person, all right? Finally, in managing your own emotional contagion, okay, if you can manage it, when you cannot reset your mood, just say it, right? You could say, I'm carrying some frustration from an earlier meeting. It isn't about you guys, but you might hear my frustration in my voice. Naming your state prevents people from having to guess. Otherwise, they're going to assume that your frustration, your attention is directed at them. Okay. Second, manage other people's emotional contagion. Okay. Protect the group from being dominated by the loudest voice in the room. The intensity of the most vocal person can quickly take over, leaving others with little health space to form their own views. Right? It deprives them from the ability to think. So slow the pace and make room. If you catch somebody that's pretty loud, you say, okay, I can hear how strongly you feel. Let's also hear what others are seeing. Protect independent thinking. When emotions start to escalate, interrupt the pattern and make sure you do it without shaming the other person. Telling people to calm down usually dismisses the emotion. A simple statement like, oof, the energy feels tense in this room now. Let's take a break. This can help the group reset without becoming overwhelmed. Now, you might have somebody that repeatedly shows negative, toxic behavior. They're cynical. They spread anxiety, irritation. They show a lot of resignation. Right? But treat Treat this as a coaching opportunity rather than something you need to recommend this person, outright in public. Okay? Pull that person aside. Speak with them privately. Okay? Share what others may be picking up, from their behavior and the effect it is having on the group. But more importantly, listen to their story. Could be that there's cynicism. It could be, a reflection of a concern that they felt that it's not being heard. Yeah? So listen to their story. You might uncover more things. Finally, strengthen positive contagion. You do not have, and then the important thing is that you don't have to do everything. Yeah. You do not have to carry the whole weight of spreading positive emotional contagion because other people in the team are resourceful too. You might have a calm, curious colleague that can really steady the room. Or you can have somebody that's very level-headed, and that team member can surface and overlook risk. Notice and name genuine examples of the curiosity, courage, calm, cooperation, and progress that you see. Okay? This is not about manufacturing positivity. It is about reinforcing the emotional patterns that help the group function well. Ultimately, managing and harnessing emotional contagion means creating an emotional climate people can think inside. That means containing the emotional dynamics that overwhelm the thinking and judgment, while cultivating the emotional energy that supports dialogue, collaboration, and thoughtful action. As a leader, you can help people feel safe to say what matters, remain open to one another, and think well together. You can set the mood of the room. Alrighty, that's the 4 concepts. I'm now going to bring everything together, okay? In doing so, I wanted to, first step back and explain why I think emotional intelligence deserves a fresh look through the lens of behavioral science, just like I did. Okay? I think emotional intelligence has so much untapped potential as a leadership practice. Yet it still sometimes gets treated as something mainly for the nice leaders, as like, it's just at the softer edge of leadership rather than the center of judgment, performance, and relationship. I think emotional intelligence can sit in the center because performance is important, decision-making is important, building relationships is important. Okay? So what we have explored today points to a different perspective to emotional intelligence. Okay, here's the insight. Emotions are information. They tell us something about what we notice, what feels important, what we fear, what we value, and how we are interpreting the situation in front of us. They also give us information about what may be happening between people and across a wider group. And here's the important part. That creates an information advantage for the emotionally intelligent leader. The leader who can read the emotion instead of being run by it is simply working with more information than the leader who cannot. They are not only listening to arguments being made or looking at the presentation or at the data in the presentation. They are also noticing the snap reaction. And they're questioning where that feeling comes from. And they're anticipating how judgment may change under pressure and paying attention to what emotions are spreading through the team. I think one of the limitations of traditional emotional intelligence education is that it can feel aspirational, ambiguous, and soft. We're told to be more self-aware. We should regulate our emotions, show empathy, and build better relationships. That's good advice, but they're not necessarily helpful for what to look into when there's a difficult, situation, right in front of you. Yeah. What behavioral science does is that it brings greater precision and tangibility to emotional intelligence. The concepts that we study today, the affect heuristic, integral and incidental emotions, the Hawk empathy gap, and emotional contagion, they all give us a more specific way to understand what may be happening. They provide patterns we can recognize and practical countermeasures we can use. So, know what to look out for. Catch it when it appears in yourself, or in another person, or in the group, and then practice what to do differently. My hope is that this makes emotional intelligence feel less like an abstract leadership ideal and more like a concrete skill that can be developed through attention and repeated practice. So, work intelligently with emotions. Why? Because emotions are information, as I said. They help us notice what matters. A team member's concern may draw our attention to something the rest of the group has overlooked. Curiosity may signal an opportunity. Second, emotional intelligence is relational and collective. We influence and are influenced by the emotional climate around us. What this means is that emotional intelligence is not just a one-on-one interpersonal capability. It's not just for practicing with somebody, right across you. No. Emotional intelligence is also a capability for leading groups and teams. The third point is what I call the lighthouse effect. When emotions run high, people look to the leader who is most steady, grounded, and reliable, like a lighthouse in stormy weather. The leader cannot make the wind, rain, and waves go away, but they can provide orientation. They can help people understand what is happening, what matters now, and how the group can move forward without being overwhelmed. And those who demonstrate this capability consistently, they command leadership. How? How to work intelligently with emotions. 3 simple steps. Know, catch, practice. Know what to look out for. This is why, for starters, I am teaching you 16 behavioral science concepts or cognitive biases to look out for so that you know what to look out for, okay? I am providing you with the language to put your finger on that funny feeling you're sensing. Catch. Notice it in yourself, in another person, and in the dynamics of the group. This noticing is what I describe as a spirit of kizuki in my pedagogy. Yeah, so it's, hold on, yeah, here we go. Yeah, it's here, I'll paste this, all right? It's the spirit of kizuki. It's about noticing. So let me paste this here. There you go. There you go. All right. So go ahead and read this, okay? But what this is about is, is the incredibly important cognitive meta skill of noticing. All right. So catch it in yourself, right? Catch it in others and in the whole group. Yes, this ability to notice, super important. Yeah. Finally, practice the if-then countermeasures and alternative behaviors you have ready to do many things. Ask another question. Test the assumptions. Take a pause. Slow the conversation. Delay the decision. Ask for other thoughts. And you can name what is happening without shaming anyone. Many things you can practice. Yeah. Today, we explore 4 concepts that help us practice this process. The affect heuristic helps catch ourselves turning a good or bad feeling into an immediate judgment. It helps us activate system 2 thinking when it matters. Integral and incidental emotions help us ask where a feeling comes from. Does it belong to the situation in front of us, or have we carried it from somewhere else? The hot cold empathy gap reminds us that judgment can change with our emotional and visceral state. It helps us prepare for pressure, built-in self-safeguards, and consider other people's state before making a character judgment on them. And we learn from emotional contagion that emotions spread and become part of the environment in which the group thinks. It asks us to manage what we bring into the room. Respond constructively to what others bring and create an emotional climate people can think aside. From an aspirational practice to a tangible practice, I hope I was successful in getting you excited again with the potential of emotional intelligence. Last one, 2 more minutes. Funny things happen in organization. A usually reasonable leader snaps at a team member saying, "Just do it," and then shuts down that person's resistance with, because I say so. And this is normally, okay leader, yeah. And usually calm and friendly colleagues suddenly explodes with rage in front of everyone. They lose it, yeah. And this is over a seemingly very benign event. A team executes a task without questioning its validity because it came from above, brain dead. Yeah. And everyone rolls their eyes and thinks, here we go again. When the leader does the usual thing, storming into the room. I've got a great idea. This would change everything. Yeah, yeah. Funny things happen. The problem is not a lack of rationality. The problem is not emotion either. It is unexamined emotion that becomes the problem. When emotions go examined and unaddressed, we make poor judgments. We damage trust and relationships and create a difficult climate where people cannot speak honestly, think clearly, or act together coherently. Again, emotions are information, and that is the leadership opportunity. You can be that person who catches the snap reaction, the person who pauses before a hot state decision, and the one that helps the group regain clarity to think well together. I hope today has given you a fresh appreciation of the potential of emotional intelligence and the motivation to continue this 5-session journey with me. Thank you.